Morning, Mrs. Jennifer Sarkodie. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning, Queen G. Thank you so much for having me, and good morning to all the listeners. I'm really excited to have this chat. And yeah, hopefully
Awesome,
we can
awesome.
get into some
Thank you so
insightful
much
things.
for honoring our invitation as well.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes. So, for starters, who is Mrs. Jennifer Sarkodie?
So, Mrs. Jennifer Sarkodie, which is a new name of mine. I got married about 8 months ago. So, I'm a wife, I'm a recruitment manager. I've been working in recruitment now for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was actually in the creatives as a fashion designer, but I took a detour in my career change because I just have a passion for helping people and speaking
Yes.
to people, and it gives me a real sense of joy going on that journey with someone from,
Yeah.
application stage, receiving that CV and putting them in their dream job. So still in keeping with my creative background, I work in a very big advertising agency here in the UK. So many of the adverts you see on TV have been commissioned by my company. So I'm an internal recruiter for them. So I recruit directly for that company. But I've had some experience in other sectors. So I hope my knowledge can cover the basis of how to make a successful application anyway. So that's a
Beautiful.
bit about myself.
Beautiful. And I'm loving it already.
Oh,
Woo!
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming today. So, when we say a recruiter, who is a recruiter?
Good question. So a recruiter is the person that would handle your application essentially. So often at times, what our responsibilities are is matching the right skills to the right job. So depending on where you work, if you work for an agency, you will have your end clients. So the client will come to you and say, we have a need for this vacancy, for this position. Can you find that person? Then we go out to the market by either headhunting. So to headhunt means to directly approach someone and let them know of the job, or we can advertise it and hope people apply to it, and we manage the whole process. So when we see a fitting CV, we speak to them, we have a first screening call with them, we qualify them, we have like an interview with them, and make sure they're fine, make sure they're fit for the job, and then we go back to our clients, basically sell the person in. I hate that terminology because you don't sell people in, but you basically give them a summary of that person's skill sets, and then send them to the hiring manager then. And then you manage the process between the candidate and the hiring manager. So along the whole process, along the interview, you will prep your candidate, you will prep the hiring manager, and be that middleman essentially. So that's what a recruiter does. We manage the interview and application process. I can't hear anymore. Sorry. The sound's gone. Yeah. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, you're
Can
back.
you
I
hear
can
me
hear you.
now?
I can. Yes.
Yes. So, I said, in essence, recruiters do manage job application processes.
Yes. Yes. In
Okay.
a nutshell. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. That is really beautiful. Thank you so much for that explanation. We really enjoy it. And I want you to explain to us some of the terminologies that we hear in job application processes. For example, we hear the term CV or resume. What is it?
Good question. So a CV or a resume is a document of all your experiences, and documented for an application for the person hiring to see what you have been up to. So a CV should include education, any qualifications you may have, any hobbies or skills. It should give a summary of yourself and career wise, and then you should have a timeline of all your experiences from to date, and that should show a breakdown of your experiences. So that's what a CV essentially is.
So it's a breakdown of your experiences. That is a CV. And
Yes.
so CV is the same as resume. It's just the different word for it.
Yeah, it's just interchangeable. Americans tend to use resumes. I've been doing some hiring for my company over at New York. So when speaking to them, I just have to change the lingo. It's just another word for a CV, but essentially Americans tend to say resume, and here in the UK we say CV, but it's the same thing.
Awesome. Okay. So, at what stage do you have to send your CV to your employer?
The very beginning stage, you have to remember this person doesn't know you yet. You know your capabilities, and you know what you can do, but this person is getting to know you or reading about you from a piece of paper. So before they've even spoken to you, before they've even qualified you that you'd be great for the job, that CV is what is selling itself. So at the very, very beginning stages when applying for a role, that's your first foot forward. That's your best foot forward. So you should make sure that sells you in the best way possible. Someone should be able to read what you're like, all your skills, just based off that. So that's the very first stage. Sending that CV in will be the first step.
Okay. So there is also something called cover letter or personal statement. What does it do?
So whilst the CV breaks down your experiences, the cover letter is your time to shine. In case you think they can't read you by just, I have worked here between these dates and that days, and listing your responsibilities, you can now encompass all of that in a written form on the cover letter. So the cover letter will talk about your ambitions, why you did things, why you ended up in that sector. It should sell you. It's a paragraph all about your skill sets and why you'd be fantastic for that job. So look at it as another extra bonus to sell yourself further. So this person should be able to read your cover letter and gauge what you're like as a person from the tone of voice and from how you've spoken about yourself. So a cover letter is just a written form to encompass that CV together, if that makes sense.
That does, absolutely. So including the cover letter, how many pages do you have to write for your CV?
Good question. CV should never be any more than 2 pages. Even if you have worked in 20 places, you have to stream it down. You don't have to put that very first job you did in 1956 on there if it's no longer relevant. I find as a recruiter, when I'm going through a CV and it's long-winded, I lose interest a little bit. So that's a very good question. Nip it down and streamline it. You find that, like myself, like I mentioned earlier on the call, I started off in another sector and I've ended up somewhere else. If I'm now applying for another recruitment role, there's not necessarily a need for them to know that my very first job was in retail, for instance. So only keep the most important and most recent stuff. So if you find that your list of where you've worked is growing, cut down maybe the very first 2 jobs you have. Cut it down each time you build on that. You don't want it to be too long-winded. I would say keeping it to a page maximum, but if it has to go over a little bit, 2 pages. And you don't want to write chunks and paragraphs. You just want to write a header of your job title, the name of the company, the dates that you worked there, and maybe 5 or 6 bullet points of your responsibilities in that job. You want to keep it concise and straight to the point. A CV should not be too long-winded.
Okay. So that does it include the cover letter, or cover letter is different, separate?
It's separate. Yeah, cover letter is separate. So the CV is one document on its own and the cover letter is separate. And even on the cover letter as well, you also don't want to be writing pages and pages. If you can keep it to a paragraph or 2, that's fine. Just talk about your most recent skills and why it is relevant to that job. Always link the cover letter back to that job that you're applying for. So if you were studying a course that is not relatable to the job you're applying, maybe don't mention that. You want to highlight your skills and why you'd be great for that particular job. So maybe a tip for writing cover letters would be to look at the job description, and we'll get onto job descriptions later, but that's what you see when you're applying for the role. So maybe look at that and look at what they're saying that they need this person to have in order to work in this job, and then highlight that in your cover letter. So if they need someone to be punctual and well organized, highlight that in your cover letter. I'm very punctual based on this. I did this in my job, which shows that I have this skill. You want to always link that back to the job, because you can write amazing things about yourself, but essentially if it's not relevant, it's not relevant for
it's
that
not
job.
going to give you that opportunity to get the job.
Exactly that. Yeah. So that's a tip for you to write in cover letters. Look at the specific job you're applying for, what is required, and list that in your cover letter that you have that.
Okay,
as well.
thank you so much for that. So you mentioned job description. I was going to tell you what is it? What is job description?
Good question. So a job description is essentially what it says. It describes the job that you are applying for. So it will give a summary of a generic summary of what that job is. Like I said in my introduction, recruiters manage the recruitment process, the application. So it will give you a summary of what that job is in general. And then specifically to that company, it then will go on to break down your roles and responsibilities within that role. So expected to do client meetings, expected to speak to people, X amount of that. It will break all the roles and responsibilities of that job. So job description essentially is what it describes the job you'll be doing. And when you apply for a job these days, many people tend to apply for jobs online. So you'd have like the job description to see what it entails before you then go in with your CV. So it explains what you may essentially be doing.
Yeah. And what about the job specification?
So the job specification is more of a summary of the job, and usually that will be for ourselves, the recruiter, in-house, internally. So it just specifies the job, and the job description is for the potential candidate applying to see what the job will entail. But the job specifications is just as this job title, this is what you generally cover, and then job description goes into more details into roles and responsibilities. Sometimes it may even include benefits of that company. We want you to visualize yourself working there, but the job specification is just expect to quickly summarize everything, and the job description goes further into detail. You're required to do this, you may do that, potential to grow, perks and benefits for working with us. So I hope that explains it. The job description is more detailed than a job spec. A job spec just covers it, outlines it, and the job description goes into further detail.
Does it also include your academics, where you've been to school, your educational background, and also some of your skills as well? Does it also include that?
Yeah, in a job spec it will. So in a job description. Another word that can interchangeably be used. Sometimes the job spec can also be in a job description too. But in a job description, yes, definitely. If that role requires a certain qualification, it will highlight that must have this qualification, must have this degree to even be considered. So it's good to read job descriptions before applying. Often at times, I guess, in a urgency or desperation to find work, people don't take their time with job descriptions. But like I said, you want to put your best foot forward. So I would advise that job descriptions are read thoroughly. If you can take 5 of those things they're asking for, then you're in a good position. But if most of it are not relevant to you, I would say don't even bother, because you won't be the preferred or the chosen for that job. And another thing to say with job descriptions, it's not the ideal it's the ideal candidate, but not the best candidate. So don't also shy away from applying if you have some of the skill sets. Job descriptions are written by us recruiters and hiring managers, and we will write our ideal candidate. It's almost like dating. You want the ideal man. He must be 6'7". But if you have 2 or 3 of those qualities that fall short, you may still consider that person. So if you've got most of that, I will still encourage people to apply. But it gives you a good indication whether you be right for the job or not.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. There is another one saying skill sets. What are they? Skill sets.
Skill sets. Good question. I've mentioned that word quite a lot. Skill sets. So skill sets are the things you think of them as your tool, the things you would need to do that job. So like a construction person or a builder would need a certain qualification to do that job, or like yourself, Queen G, you have personable skills, you are good at relationship building. You need all of that to do the job you do, to be a radio presenter. So think of it as the tools needed in order to do that job. If you wanted to be a nurse, for instance, you couldn't just do that if you didn't have a certain qualification. So your skills are the tools you would need to be utilized in that job. So it's things that you use on a daily basis within that job. Essentially, is the skills. So just think of them as the tools.
So think about your skills as the tools. I want to take this opportunity to welcome all my viewers who have joined me on Facebook and YouTube as well. So give me some few minutes to recognize them all. Good morning to you, Casper Siam. He said the audio isn't working. I think it's the time that you said the audio isn't working. He said the same. I think it's working now. So thank you all for joining. Lady Patience Aveka says, good morning, Queen G, and your guest, Mrs. Jennifer Sarkodie Frimpo. Oh, okay. She said Mr. Sarkodie Frimpo. I think she thought Mr. Sarkodie was coming as well. But Mr. Sarkodie will be here next time. And Lady Patience Aveka says, good topic. And Lady Patience says, solve again. She said, very good questions and great answers. I'm learning a lot here. Thank you so much, Lady Patience. And Okromansa Kete Adwa and Nyomokro Dance. Wow, thank you. Watching you live from Ghana, Mrs. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching us. And it says, so Casper is saying, what percentage of the CV and cover letter affects the application process?
Good question. Thanks for that, Casper. Like I said, it affects majority of the application. That's the first thing the hiring manager. So the hiring manager is the person hiring for the position. That's the first thing they ever see of you or know of you. So you want to make sure that is your selling point. So it should be thorough. It should be straight to the point. It should explain you. Someone should see that and get a good understanding of who you are. You also don't want to keep it too vague. So be specific whilst keeping it short. So if it's I manage a team, say how you manage the team by running regular meetings with them, by doing, you want to get into the specifics. And like I said, make it linked to that particular job. So if it helps you write a CV or write a cover letter, look at what they're asking in the job description and make sure you bring those to light in your job application. I remember when I first started working in recruitment and I was unfamiliar with the sector I was recruiting for at the time. It was in IT. I was told to simply just search keywords from people's CVs. And if those keywords popped up, that meant they could do the job. So if you see the particular things, highlight that in your CV, because sometimes some recruiters are not specialists in your sector that you're applying to. So you want to make sure anyone reading that can say, yes, definitely this man can do the job based on you matching it back to the job description. So your CV is very important. I'll say a good percentage of that is 100%. That's the first thing we ever know of you before we get on the phone and before we interview you. So that is your selling point. Make sure it's thorough, make sure it sells you and in the best light possible.
Yeah, a good percentage is 100%. I like that very, very, very well. So whenever you are writing your CV, remember, tell yourself, I have to give my all, give your all, and so that you will be able to get that. So that brings me to my question. How do you make a successful application, job application? So tell us a little bit more about that.
perfect. It's going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but
I know.
to have a successful job application, first and foremost, make sure you can do the job. There's a difference to wishing that it's your dream job and being right for the job. So what I'm trying to say is maybe I may want to be a retail manager tomorrow, but I have no skills in running a shop. So already that rules me out. That is something I would like to do, but I don't have the capabilities to do. So if you want to be selected for a job, you have to first of all make sure you have the qualities and the qualifications that match the job. If you should start the job tomorrow, do you need much training, or can you come in and hit the ground running? So first and foremost, I'll say make sure you have those skills, those tools to even be able to do it in the first place. That sets you miles ahead. I can't tell you how many times I have applications come through and people mean well, but applying for my job that unfortunately at this time, they just don't have the qualifications to do. So on a separate note, if you do want to then change careers and do something that interests you, look at what you need, the skills that you need to do that job. Gain those and then go back to the drawing board of applying. But in a scenario where you do already have those skill sets, make sure you do it before even applying for that job. And like I said, be thorough in reading the job description. That's very important. That explains from the hiring manager's perspective that ideal candidate that they want. So if you can read that job description and you have at least 3 or 4 of those things, then go for it and make sure to highlight that back in the cover letter and back in your CV. If it's too much of an effort to amend your CV each time, have a templated cover letter that you can amend keywords to every time you apply for a job. So that's a good bonus tip. So make sure that cover letter sells you. Make sure you mention at least 2 of those 3 skills that they say they want in your cover letter and in your CV. It gives you front running. From paper, they don't know you, but they're like, okay, well, she's mentioned she can do this and that. And the job we want this person for, we also want them to do this and that matches perfectly. So always match that back to the job description. And that's another way to have a successful application. If you want to go an extra mile, I will say maybe have a LinkedIn profile. So what LinkedIn is, it's a professional social media platform, which is like a CV, but visually. So you know how we have Facebook and we have a profile. You have a profile on LinkedIn and you can date all your experiences on there. We use it a lot in recruitment to search people and look at where they're working, maybe even see a picture at times. So make sure you've got a nice professional picture on there as well. So if on some job descriptions, it may say the person looking for the job. If you come across one of those, I will say, look for this person on LinkedIn and connect with them, add them on your LinkedIn professional page, and maybe follow up with a note and say, hi, my name is such and such. I saw you were advertising for this. I have applied, but I just want to let you know I'm interested. I think I'm the right person for the job. It's just taking that extra mile and putting your best foot forward. Or essentially, if you find out who's hiring for that role, you can even email them directly. We get it all the time. And it adds a personal touch, you know, aside from just applying, you're showing that you're interested and you really want this job. So it shows that you're determined. So extra bonus points there for you on how to have a successful application. And beyond the interview, if you're successful enough to then have an interview, I would say follow up again. It's always nice. Follow up with an email. I enjoyed meeting you today. I think that interview went really well. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts and express your interest. You're always front of mind. And even if, like I said, you don't tick all the boxes off, your interest and your keenness can even at times sway people. So I'll say all those tips are good tips on how to have a successful application there.
Beautiful, beautiful. I've learned so much from what you have told us. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And this is Nancy. Nancy says, good morning, Queen G and Mrs. Jennifer. Wow, you have a great knowledge and I am enjoying it so much. Mrs. Jennifer, I want to ask you this question. If I am writing a CV, do I have to add my name, my age, and my address?
Good question. Your name, definitely. If we should call you back, if you are successful with the job, we want to be able to address you. So a name, definitely. The address is a bit of a taboo. Some people do it, others don't. And I see why. It's confidential. It's your personal details. You can completely leave it out or you can put it in. Your choice entirely. But your name should go on there, and your full name, your legal full name as well. So at work, I'm known as Jen. They cut my name short, but my official name is Jennifer. On official documents, and if I was applying to a role, I will put my full name. And my surname, I dropped the other hyphenated name. It's Sarkodie Frimpong.
Yes.
But for a job, you have to put your full legal name on your CV. So that's one tip. The address, completely your call, but I wouldn't bother about an age. Sometimes there's biasness when applying to roles. Remember, they don't know you. So if we can see you're a certain age and maybe that role, they would prefer it to be maybe a younger person. We're human, there's unconscious biasness. We might even rule someone out thinking they're not fit for the job because they might be too old or too young. So your age is not necessary
Important.
to have on your CV. Yeah, and I know some countries do this, but we don't do it so much in the UK. But sometimes people add a photo on their CV. Again, that's not needed. I would just say, in terms of your personal details, just your full legal name and address if you want, and that's it. No date of births or no photographs.
Okay. No date of birth, no photographs. Don't do that. Please remember, do not do that. It's a no.
Exactly.
Thank you for that. But do you have to put your number, your phone number on it?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for that. Yes, because how else would we contact you? A phone number and an email address must 100% go on a CV. It's how we will be able to get back in touch with you if we want to progress with you in the application. I've had people apply for jobs sometimes and they're fantastic. Their CV looks great, but they have no contact details. And it's only because I'm a recruiter, I then use my initiative to go on LinkedIn and message them or maybe find their details on there. But it saves the hustle. And some people don't have internal recruiters. They're doing their own recruitment. So if that contact detail was missing, then unfortunately they will just have to pass your application and move forward with someone else. So yes, definitely. If you don't take anything else away from today, please write your phone numbers and your email address on your CVs.
Beautiful. Please remember, write your phone numbers and your email addresses on your CV. It's very important you do that. Yes, beautiful. Thank you so much. And Deco Philemon says that good topic. I wish I could join you on Facebook today, but I'm listening live on radio. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening live on radio. I think I've got some messages on Facebook to read for you as well. Just in case when the link goes, please sign in again and join us.
Perfect.
So, Felix Octavio says, is it ideal to apply for a job you are overqualified for?
Good question. Again, some people would not process people forward for jobs because they are overqualified. So what I would say is, think about why you're applying to that job. Is it that you want to retrain in something else, or you want to get your foot in that company and work your way up, whatever it may be? And I'll say maybe highlight that in a cover letter so that you're not completely ruled out. Because what it reads to us, remember, like I said, these people that are reviewing the CVs, myself, hiring managers, we don't know you. We're just going by your CV.
Yeah.
So what that reads to us is, I wonder why he's applying for a job that he's only overqualified for. Has it not worked out for him in his career path? Does he know he's doing this? He's selling himself short.
Yeah.
It's going to be all, unfortunately, some negative connotations attached to that. So whatever your reasons are for applying for a role that you're overqualified for, highlight that in your cover letter, and that puts a bit more of a perspective to it. So that's what I would say. I know sometimes when people have like maybe relocated to another country and your qualifications you gain from one country may not tally up with another, you kind of have to take a step back and retrain. But on a CV, we wouldn't know your background. So I'll say highlight the background in a cover letter before applying for a job you're overqualified for. Because unfortunately, it doesn't have the best light, and sometimes you may not get a call back for that.
Beautiful. Thank you for that as well. Very interesting. And Felix Otabo also asked these questions. Do recruiters do social media search for applicants?
Yes, we do at times, actually. We do. We shouldn't do, because it's not a professional platform. Your social media is your social media page. Unless it's a LinkedIn, we shouldn't do. But sometimes people do it, especially in my line of work, because I work in the creatives in an advertising agency.
Yes.
We may at times do that. Not always, to be very honest with you. So don't worry if you think, you've got some inappropriate things on your social media that you wouldn't want a future employee to see. Don't worry about that so much, because we should only be looking at maybe a CV and LinkedIn. But if you want to cover your back in case they have a further look at your other social media handles or channels, maybe just make sure it still looks professional and it aligns with your LinkedIn and your CV as well.
Beautiful. Nana Bwedu says, very nice topic. Please keep it up. Perfect resource person. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the fact that you were able to join us today. We really appreciate your time. So there is another question for you. Give me a minute and I will read that. I have an interview coming up on Tuesday, and this is supposed to be a telephone interview. How do I deal with that?
Good question. So treat it as though it's still a face-to-face interview. So when I first started looking for roles when I was younger in my prime, I had a phone interview once, and I thought, oh, it's informal. I can still move around. I don't have to be stationary whilst I take the call. And I think I was washing up the dishes at the same time I was trying to interview. So that went against me. And unfortunately, they didn't progress with my application. And one of the feedback was I was distracted. And although it was a phone call, I didn't kind of like prioritize that or give it my best. So I would say definitely find a quiet room, act as though the person is face to face. Make sure you've got a good place you could be stationary for. Prep yourself. Look at some interview questions that may come up and how you can best answer that. So I used to do practice interviews with friends and family. So I'm well equipped before I get there. So nothing can throw me off. Granted, you won't know exactly everything they will ask, but some things are always going to come up in an interview. For example, tell me about yourself is one common interview question that more or less always comes up. So have a think about that when that question does come up. What can I say about myself? Or tell me a bit, it might be phrased differently. Tell me a bit more about yourself. So maybe do some practice and prep prior to that. And I'll say, have some questions at the end as well. And that's a tip for both a phone call and an in-person interview. Interviewers want to see that you're also interested and you're also keen. So if they ever say, do you have any questions for me? Don't leave it as, no, I don't. It doesn't put you in the best light. You should show some interest. And even if it's just a question or two, it makes you credible and it shows that you've done your research and you're interested in the company. So you could maybe, do your research on them as well, see what they've been up to recently and what you found about them, and maybe probe a bit more on that on the end of the call and say, oh, I see on your website this and that. Tell me a bit more about that. It shows, oh, this person is very interested in working here. She's gone that extra mile to research on us and has even come back with questions. So I'll say have questions prepared, be stationary, be in a quiet room with no distractions, and prep some interview questions ahead of time.
Awesome. Please do give us your final words, and before that I want you to explain a little bit more the difference between application form and CV.
Okay, no problem. I'll explain that again and then give, I guess, my final advice on searches. So
2 minutes.
If anyone missed it before, a CV is an outline and a breakdown of your career experiences. It should detail a section for your skills, maybe some hobbies. It's what the hiring manager will see of you first, so she sell you. And I'll say a summary. Don't go straight in with the experiences. Maybe a summary. I'm a qualified nurse with 5 years experience, gain it specifically in this. I have done this and that. My qualifications in this and that has made me gain this and that experience. And then just highlight that summary. Keep it sweet and short. Maybe 3 lines at most. And then you don't want to have the CV too long. Try and keep it on a page 2 if you have to really go over. And if you've worked a lot of jobs, like some people have, start to cut back on it. You don't want every single thing you've ever done to be on there. It has to be the most recent ones as well. And then I would say then highlight the job title, the company you're working for, and the timeline in which you worked for. And then underneath that, I would just say a few bullet points on your key roles and responsibilities you did in that job. I know I said keep it to the point, but don't keep the responsibilities too vague. Try and go in detail a little bit. So if it's that you manage a team, what did you do in managing that team? Remember, people don't know you. That's the first time they're ever seeing you in some capacity. So try and be as explanative as possible whilst keeping it short. And then the cover letter is what you don't get to do on the CV. On the CV, you might not have the opportunity to be as expressive. So the cover letter is just a small paragraph explaining a bit more about yourself. And I mentioned earlier, if it's for a particular job that needs particular key skills, make sure you highlight those keywords in that cover letter. It shows that you can do the job, and it just puts it brightens your CV application even more so. So that's the difference between a cover letter and a job description. So in terms of, I guess, like final words in applying for a job, the first advice and tip I would say is do not be discouraged. Do not be discouraged at all. And I know it sounds really simple.
Yeah.
Depending on what sector you work in, sometimes the competition is so tough. You are applying. First of all, the job application is open on a job board for all to apply for. So it's yourself and everybody else that has that skill set.
Yeah, skill sets.
Yeah. And it's a very lazy thing that recruiters do at times because we can't hire everybody. So it's kind of like a first one in, first person who applies is kind of like who we go for. So it all depends. It's never necessarily yourself. Maybe it's how far along you applied. If the job has been open for 100 days, the likelihood of that is many have applied in that time frame. So as much as you may be terrific for the job, your CV might not even get looked at that point because it's been open for a while. We're probably at the later stages of interviews and we're not, reviewing so many CVs. So do not be discouraged. It's competitive out there. The job search market can be hard, but you have to just keep going. Keep going. There's not a shortage of jobs. Last time I checked, there's many, many jobs out there. And while you may have a dream job and a dream company, if it's not that, don't be disheartened. Keep going for it. I can be here all day on how I found some jobs in the most unique ways. It may not always be a job application. It may be a referral, a word of mouth as well. Go to job networks as well. Look some up. There may be, we do career opportunities at my workplace, and we set up like a stand and we talk to people and at entry levels. So that's another way of, meeting the company and seeing what jobs they have going. But do not be discouraged. Try and put your best foot forward, interview prep, do that cover letter, do all those tips I said at the beginning, follow up with the hiring manager after your application with an email, selling yourself further. Not many people do this. It puts you in a good light and it puts you one step forward. And take your time to read the job description to make sure it even matches with your skill sets in the first instance. And just all the best, and hopefully these tips can help everyone in their job search.
Thank you so much for your time. Our time is up. So thank you so much for coming, and we hope to see you again for more tips. Stay blessed. Thank you. So, to you, my listeners, I am so grateful for your time. As always, love me and don't leave me. Until next time. Woo-hoo!